Namaste and welcome to the Divas That Care Network. I'm your host, Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you're listening to Above the Ground podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, our network is going into its 16th year and is listened to in over 30 countries. I'd like to personally thank you for giving me the gift of your time. As always, it is my honor to hold space for you. And today we are in the nutrition episode of our sequence. And I just want to, reiterate again how nutrition is more of a passion for me, I think, than anything else, because at this point in my experience, I will say it has been really pivotal in that my body unfortunately, I'm not going to say it's unlucky, but unfortunately, I don't have the metabolism of a supermodel. I don't have the metabolism of even some of my friends, who have always been able to, eat pretty much whatever, even if it's in moderation, and remain quite slim. I've always been aired a little more on the side of curvy. We'll go with curvy. And so I've always been mindful of that fact. And also, I think that it's important to, love the body that the good Lord gave you, or the universe gave you, or your parents and your mother gave you, right? Shake what your mama gave you, if you will. And so in that mindset, diet has played a really big role for me because I've always been, we'll call it weird. I'll say weird. I'll embrace my inner quirk. In that even when I was younger, when I was born, my parents actually did not give me, and this could maybe this is part of it, going all the way back. My parents did not allow me to have meat. It wasn't until I was, I think, 3 or 4 years old, and they went away and left me with my Spanish grandparents that I had bacon for the first time. And man, did I fall head over heels in love with bacon, and who doesn't feel that way? Um, until I knew and figured out what it was at a later date. So I don't know if that, 3 year vegetarian diet, obviously, my mother breastfed and I was given, I'm sure I was given dairy when I was younger, but I don't believe I was given any actual, meat products at that time until, like I said, they went away and I was catapulted into the world of bacon and chicken and all things delicious of the animal protein nature. And so, when we talk about preferences, there's so much. I'm an overthinker. Hi, it's me always. And so I've always been cognizant. And I remember, I think I was about 5, 6 years old. And I remember sitting at lunch with my mom and I was eating a hot dog, blessed enough that my hot dog happened to be on a baguette because my mom was kind of fancy like that. And I bit into it and I just stopped and I put it down and I said, I can't eat this. And the same thing happened to me when I was older in my like teenage years, where I had been eating meat again. And we went out to a very nice, we were on vacation in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I was actually with my friends and I had ordered a steak. And I was with my friend's family and my friend's parents. And I took a bite of the steak and my entire body went, no. And I just knew what I was eating. I knew I was eating a living being, well, had been living at that point. And for whatever reason, it's a complete moral thing, right? And I don't know if it has roots. Maybe should do a past life transgression, or maybe I should even do just a hypnosis appointment just to see if it goes back to that upbringing before I was cognizant and had opened up the bacon portal. But I just think that for me, it was very much like smacked in my face, couldn't eat it, couldn't chew it, couldn't have another bite of it, couldn't smell it. And I've always had these cycles where I will be vegetarian and then I will get run down and I will get sick more easily. And my body responds very well to animal protein, but my mind and my heart does not. So it's always been this battle, this inner struggle for me. And I will always notice that whenever I go full vegetarian, and I will say that definitely when I was younger, and I try to be more cognizant as I got older, but if you want to talk about a very, very slap in the face, can't ignore, can't say it's not true dichotomy between carbohydrates and lean animal proteins, try going from paleo to vegetarian and stop eating all the lean animal protein and change it for beans and grains. And for me, when I did that, as we'll only go back to what I'll call a cognizant adult, it was about like 7 years ago, give or take, and I blew up like a balloon. A balloon, the biggest I had been in my adult life, arguably. And I wasn't necessarily, okay, I had corn chips, right? I would eat nachos, okay. I think I did go back to eating grains and pasta, so there was gluten. And but I wasn't eating, I wasn't going to McDonald's. I wasn't going, and no judgment of people who do eat fast food, but I wasn't going to that extreme either of, just with the choices that we were making, we're still relatively conscious. I was still choosing, health food store brands, and I was still choosing, whole grains and whole nutrients and all that, quinoa over, bread, or maybe I would have a bun on a sandwich, etc. But I mean, there was no clearer, well, wow, kind of aha moment than going from A to B. And so, as I said, I think last time we had this nutrition conversation, we were talking about how, the conversation kind of becomes redundant at a certain point because you know it's healthy and you know it's not healthy, and it's up to you what choice you decide to make for yourself. And you also have to know what your own body is able to metabolize and what works for you. I have plenty of friends that can eat, like I said, whatever they want, pizza, grain, gluten, they're fine. Not only are they fine, they look the same. Doesn't matter. For me, it's never been that way. And that's okay. It is what it is. It just has shown me. It's why I do what I do. It's why I have these conversations with you, because I want to share that. So if someone is feeling frustrated, they can perhaps be inspired for the discipline it takes to limit your diet and be the annoying friend when you go out to lunch and when you go out to dinner. Be that advocate for yourself, which, yeah, it may impact those around you. And if they love you, it shouldn't matter at the end of the day. But all that being said, when I was getting ready to film this particular sequence, this episode in our turn inward sequence, right, we talked a little bit about yoga and turning the energy, postures that turn the energy back into the body. We just did a meditation. If you didn't, I encourage you to go back and try that meditation because it's so applicable for any and all times where you feel like you're just bleeding and leaking energy out from you. And it's a way to just bring that energy back within you. And I think that that's so important. We forget sometimes that our own energy, as beautiful as it is, we need it too. And we're always putting it out. We're always pushing it outwards. So always good reminder to be able to turn your focus and turn your energy back in. So when you think about, okay, how am I going to use this theme to bring the focus inwards when it comes to nutrition? And so this is the conversation that we're having. And it's really this conversation, I'm going to touch on one specific aspect because it relates to the last nutrition episode that I spoke on. But I really want to focus on the listening to your body aspect and the fact that through the experience that I've gone through with this struggle, a lifetime struggle of heart over head, if you will, or heart over body, really, that you begin to have these conversations with yourself and try to find a trajectory that works for you. So for many years, I did the meat cheat, which was I was predominantly vegetarian. And then, when I started to feel, for me, it would be red meat. I think I may have started to have some low iron or whatever the case may be, I would start to crave it. And then I would have, a burger or a steak, maybe once a week, maybe once a month, once every 2 weeks, something like that when my body felt like it needed it. But other than that, I was predominantly vegetarian. The problem was, as I mentioned, having been paleo, going from vegetarian to keto, so vegetarian keto, and then keto and I, as mentioned in the past, did not blend well at all. It just didn't work for me. I got very, very ill because I think my body, due to, some potential gallbladder things, may not process fats as easily as other people's are able to. So keto was not for me. And it can work very well for people. And I've heard wonderful people, even my own father who was diabetic was on a keto diet, said he felt great. I felt like I was dying. It was not for me. And I knew it. So after a couple months, did I lose some weight? I did lose some weight. Was it for me? Was it sustainable? That's going to be the key takeaway word of the day. Is it sustainable? And the answer is heck no, it was not sustainable. So I went from keto to paleo, which again meant, okay, well, at least we're on the low carb train. It was not a difficult transition, but it meant eliminating all of the dairy that I was using to remain vegetarian and repurposing that dairy with meat products. And at the time, I was actually living in LA, and they had a wonderful service called Pete's Paleo. I don't know if it's still a thing, but I will plug them from back in the day. I don't know if they made it through COVID because I lived in LA right before COVID. But Pete's Paleo saved my life. So it was a meal delivery service. It was shipped to my home. The food was really, really good. It was, high quality proteins, and it was kind of prepackaged in a delicious way. And it was easy to come home from work, throw it in the frying pan or in the oven, and there you go. So I was able to do that, but it was, again, it was a struggle mentally and emotionally with the amount of meat that you have to consume in order to, kind of stay satiated when you eliminate all the carbohydrates, essentially. So after a time on that was when I pivoted and went back to being a vegetarian and blew up like a balloon. And that remained for, we'll say through COVID and into, I guess, the past, I don't know, 3 years now, give or take. So again, I decided after, struggling and even trying to be healthy and mindful of the choices that I made with my meat cheats, right? And trying to keep quinoa as a focus and vegetables as a focus and not overloading on the grains and, implementing eggs back in, for example. We will circle back to the egg conversation. Definitely, because that's going to be a whole part of the conversation today. Tongue in cheek, turning in words, if you will. But getting back to the idea of keeping the focus inwards and keeping your eyes, if you will, your third eye, your inner mind's eye on your body and how it responds. And just after, trying and years of fighting on the mind aspect of not eating meat, I just finally said, that's it. And I went back to paleo. And this time, instead of like the last time where I went vegetarian, keto, paleo, this time it was straight from vegetarian to paleo, which meant I did it gradually. And I think I've mentioned this in the past. So I first gave up grains and I kept legumes and I kept dairy. And then I started to add meat. And then I gave up the legumes and dairy. And it was a gentler transition for my body. So I do recommend that if this is something that you do decide to play with, to potentially experiment with for your own body, I would say that that's a good way to do it. I wouldn't go all at once. I always recommend slow and steady. Think tortoise, not hare. I think I've said that before. I'm sure I'll say it again. And when you're having these transitional periods, be gentle, be kind with yourself. And ironically, I don't like to get too heavy into the religious, spiritual, yes, religious, no. But I have mentioned before, and I'll say again, I am a practicing Catholic, and it was Lent that actually inspired these changes. And so it was the first time I gave up all grains was during Lent. And then after Lent, which was like the 40-day period, right? For those of you that are not Catholic, after the 40-day period, after that transition, which I committed to and I was able to do, I was then able to transition and release the dairy and legumes. And then it was the following year. No, I'm lying. It was not. It was shortly thereafter when I committed to all of that. So it was March, and then after April, I gave up everything else. And then I believe it was May of that year, I gave up all alcohol as well. So the last fix that I have, the last love of my life is caffeine. And I have not come to a place where I can function properly without caffeine. Blame it on the thyroid condition. That's okay. But essentially, it was a gradual progression that made it easier for me and I think for my body to handle instead of like the just all to nothing and your body's like, oh, what are you doing? So we like to let our body know, develop that relationship with our body. And that's where yoga comes into play. That's where meditation comes into play. And that's where these nutrition episodes, which focus on listening to your own body and what it needs and paying attention. So, what I will say is for those of you who have an interest in this, but maybe don't have or want to cultivate the discipline, don't think that you can. All my friends are like, oh my God, I can't believe you do this. Like, everyone can do it, especially women. If you are a woman that has had a child and you say, oh, I can't stop drinking, and I say, did you have a baby? Well, yeah. Did you stop drinking? Well, yeah. Then you can. So you can. You've proven that you can. Not to eliminate the men from the conversation. I'm sure you can too, but that's just a pretty easy reminder for women who are mothers that, hey, yes, you can because you did. So in keeping with that, what I found after going paleo in this way is that much like the Whole Food 30 plan, which is basically paleo, dictates if you do it for 30 days, it's almost like a system reset for your body. And then you can start to reintroduce foods and come back to that. Okay, let's say I want to be more conscious and I want some grains or I want some legumes in my diet. I want to reintroduce some things. I believe on Whole 30, you may need to eliminate eggs. I have to double check on that. Don't quote me on that. But there are some things. Whole 30 is stricter, I believe, than paleo, especially when you're doing the cleanse. Like I would have coconut sugar. I'm not sure I'm not sure you're supposed to do that. So please look into it if it's something that interests you. Like I said, I went paleo. I did not do quote unquote Whole 30 for those of you that are listening and not watching, as it is its own kind of practical application, but the two are very much in alignment. And so a lot of people will go Whole 30. 30 means the 30-day cleanse. So I do recommend doing that. And I know I've mentioned this before, so I'll keep this aspect brief. But the reason is because I realized that I always knew corn was a trigger for me because I loved movie theater popcorn. And every time I ate it, I felt god awful. So I always knew corn was a problem for me. But I would do it anyway because I would just be like, it's worth it because it's so greasy and delicious. Couldn't be the butter, that god awful chemical butter that they squirt all over it. No, it's got to be the corn, but it is for me. But I also noticed I had gone to sushi and I got a seaweed salad and I was said no dairy in the dressing and they gave oh, it's a vinaigrette. Great. It was rice vinegar. And I got an immediate stabbing sensation in the side of my head and I smelled it and I knew that that dressing was not good for me. So rice wine vinegar, another issue that I didn't even know I had that came screaming to the forefront. And so the reason that I'm bringing this up for you guys is very simply because if you can always go to a nutritionist, you can go to an allergist, you can have the food allergies done for you. And I highly recommend that. If you have the capacity, the time, the finances to do so, please do. And there's nothing wrong with doing that. This is just a way to have your body reset so that you can start to clean out the baseline so that when you start to reintroduce foods or when you start to consume foods that should fall into the category, but for some reason are an outlier and you have a physical reaction, then you start to know better what serves you and what does not. And that's how we turn the focus inward for our nutrition and our diet. It's by creating a blank canvas, if you will, of clean eating from which to then understand where and when we can add to our diet, change and refine our diet to support our specific and individual bodies, because it is not a one size fits all. It's just not. And it never will be, because everyone's got their own metabolism, their own genetics, their own flora in their gut. Everyone talks about gut health, and I'm not going to get into that because I'm not a doctor. But there's so much that it is such a personal thing. There's so much that comes into play with it that what works for me may very well not work for you. And what works for somebody else may not work for me. And so with that idea of individuality coming together, what I can say is clean eating, which is less processed foods, right? Eating as many whole foods as you can, whether they be grains, whether or not they be grains, eating as many vegetables and fruits as you can. lower starch, higher protein, right? This general, the boring, repetitive, I said this last time, hey, listen, we've been down this road. Eat your fruits and vegetables, don't eat your sugar. I put raw honey in my rise mushroom coffee in the morning, right? It's still sugar, but it's the gentlest form. It's certainly, as I've had with my vegan chef friend, it's not technically vegan, even though the bees like doing it, and that was my argument. The bees like it; they do it on purpose. Why can't we have some? So to that end, moving into the fact that I already brought up Lent, I'm going to bring it up again because Ash Wednesday was just this past week. And for this year, pending our last nutrition conversation where I said, the meat is still a problem for me. I can't get over it. And I won't say what movie it was. And I'm sorry to even share this because it was just so grotesque, but it just stuck with me. And I'm sure it was AI generated and fake, but I saw a movie where they had a gentleman eating sushi and the fish was on the plate breathing. And I was thinking about it now. And again, I'm sure it was AI, and the comment in the movie was that's illegal in this country. And my heart, my esophagus, my entire center of my body just shut down and closed in on itself. And I was like, I started crying. And I remember being a little kid and being on the beach, and my friend's father was fishing, and he just let the fish flop on the shore, and I bawled outright, started just crying uncontrollably, and they had to throw the fish back in the water. And I'm still that person. When I was an adult teenager, I will say I wanted to buy the Lap's lobster in the tank and set it free and keep it in the bathtub for the weekend. Like that will always be me. I will never not be that person. I move earthworms off the sidewalk. I pick up bugs and place them on plants. I will always be that person. I'm an empath. I can't. So for Lent this year, as I kind of go with this nutritional based theme around Lent, I am giving up meat. And so we had this conversation of how do you do paleo, and paleo and vegan aren't as similar with the exception of the meat products. So how do you do paleo without doing meat? And so I planned and I strategized, and there is a doctor, I believe his name is Mark Hyman, who calls it a pagan diet or pagan diet. Pagan? But I think it's pagan because I don't think pagan would go over well unless we're having the jokingly Catholic conversation that we're having right now. I believe it's the pagan diet, and it's paleo and vegan. And I don't subscribe to any one doctor say, hey, listen, you should do whatever this human tells you. You should do what your body tells you. That will always be my advice to you. Do what your body says and do it well. But essentially that's what I'm going to try. And you can call it plant-based paleo. But the bottom line is I'll keep you posted. We'll see how it goes. But what am I going to rely very, very heavily on? The egg. I'm going to rely very heavily on the egg. And the reason for that is because if you're going back years, eggs were, attributed to high cholesterol. Well, they actually support the positive cholesterol, but everything in moderation. Unfortunately for me, as I go through this process of eliminating meat and fish, like I said, based on that movie that scarred me for life, I stopped eating sushi and fish. Very, very limited since then because it just crushed my soul in a way that I was unprepared for watching a movie on a random Friday night. So when we talk about eggs, they're so versatile. They have so many nutrients in them. And they are, I opt for the more expensive, free range, certified humane, as locally sourced as I can. I happen to live in an area where if I wanted to, I could actually call up a neighbor and get her fresh eggs. So maybe I will start doing that now that I'm on this kick. But there's also implications for egg whites if the plan is to go full meat free. So I also found a mushroom based, I'm going to turn into a mushroom with the amount of mushrooms that I eat or mushroom products that I eat, a mushroom based. And again, so here we are leaning away from the lack of processing towards the vegan or vegetarian option, but a mushroom bacon. I have yet to try it, but I found it, and I will keep you posted on to how that tastes. And so we're just shifting the narrative. The other thing that I found that I'm really excited to share with you guys, if you don't have it in your area, I hope you can find it. They are refrigerated, but Egg Life egg white wraps. They are amazing, and it turns the idea of a sandwich in on itself because you can take any amount of vegetables. I like to put guac, sprouts, and spinach inside one of these things. And unlike some of the cassava-based or grain-free wraps that you can purchase, a lot of them are coconut wraps. They crack, things fall out of them. It's like a hot mess. No shade, right? Like, thank you for providing us with options. But these Egg Life ones, A, it's egg whites only. B, it is so you're not getting the cholesterol. That's a fear that you have. And it's just so easy. They're tasty. They're delicious. You're getting all that protein that you need and want, and you're able to wrap whatever kind of vegetables, whatever kind of flavor. They're so versatile that you can you want feeling barbecue, feeling Italian, feeling, curry in your life for the evening. It's great. I've been living on these amazing cauliflower rice based like egg fried rice, but it's cauliflower rice, and it's quick and it's easy and it's delicious. And so does it take some creative and ingenuity and thinking and cooking? Yeah. Do you have to plan and pay attention? Yes, you do. And I hope that we I know not everybody has the time, and I know not everybody has the inclination. For me, it's always been important, like I said, because it was kind of born out of necessity. But to that end, I have always found that my body did well with eggs. Now, I'm going to take the Ayurvedic stance view on eggs and say that if we were looking at my metabolism, my structure from an Ayurvedic perspective, and it's so complex. So please forgive me for even bringing it up with the limited viewpoint that I'm about to share. But eggs are generally considered heavy and oily, and so they are beneficial for the one doshic type that I have the least, which means that they are probably not Ayurvedically recommended for me because they enhance the kapha and the pitta, which are the water and fire elements, because of their density. They're considered oily and heavy, right? And so they are predominantly best for vata, which is the air-based or the ether-based doshic type. And it's probably the type that I am least. And that's okay, because like I said, we have to kind of run with the idea of what we can work with and what serves us best overall. Also, Ayurveda will recommend that you don't, and I know this is going to be very sad for those who love their cheesy eggs or their eggs Benedict, but Ayurveda also says that you should not mix eggs with fruit. I know, crazy. And also dairy or cheese of any kind. So I apologize for throwing a monkey wrench in what everybody loves, is eggs in some sort of cheese or cream. But to that end, you could always potentially go plant-based, but then you're actually mixing it with the fruit, which Ayurveda also says is not so great. So cauliflower rice, fried rice for you may, I hope, be wonderful, as it served me very, very well. But again, I will keep you posted. I will let you know how it goes. So far, so good. And as I don't want to eat, 3 eggs a day, every day, 7 days a week, because all things in moderation, even are eggs. I did last night, I had a completely vegetarian day. So I didn't actually have any animal protein. I had a lovely tapas style dinner with some coconut yogurt and some olives and nuts. And, it was some potato based grain-free crackers, and it was delightful. So there's just, you can have a salad. There's so many things that you can do, and we live in a time, and I know not everybody's blessed to have the finances, not everybody's blessed to live in an area where I am, where we have access to a health food store that has these fun, egg white options and all of these plant-based or grain-free options. But there are lots of online places that deliver, that have access to these types of foods. And again, it all comes down to what you're willing and able to do for yourself, and how even that can change and you are able to navigate through that. So I just want to share again my process as I navigate and as I pivot and change. And God save the next person who goes goes out to dinner with me where I can't even have chicken anymore, right? But like I said, I can have a salad, I will figure it out, and I will make it work as I always have. To that end, I think going back to the focus of inward and the focus of knowing what's best for you, knowing what's best for your body, and making those decisions. I had a friend of mine who is consulting with a nutritionist, and we had a conversation about the sustainability of a paleo diet, and the sustainability of this particular nutritionist does incorporate grains and legumes. And my friend was complaining that there was there was that feeling of I don't want to say bloatedness, heaviness, whatever you want to call it. And I said, I've never found the paleo diet, with the exception of the mental and emotional, trauma of eating animal products that my friend does not have. Totally fine eating animal products and prefers them, actually. But I've never found paleo to be unsustainable. I feel like there are plenty of options, and I feel like it's just a matter of getting creative. And as he said to me, yeah, but then when you go back to, and I said, yeah, but what if you don't go back to? Because that's what happened to me. I was living proof of that when I went back to being a vegetarian, and I went back to eating corn chips and eating all of the beans, and back to dairy as my protein source. Beans and dairy as vegetarian were basically my main protein source, and I was cognizant about it. I ate low fat, non-fat Greek yogurt. I ate good cheese, not Kraft Velveeta. I ate, brie and goat cheese, and even some of it was like the raw imported Greek goat cheese. So I was cognizant. I tried to make conscious choices and elevated choices, which I'm in a position to make, and I'm grateful for that. But again, there is an element of personal responsibility, and there's an element of listening to your body. So I said to my friend, I was like, hey, listen, so then don't eat it. Have the conversation with the nutritionist. Hey, I'm still feeling this way. I'm going to sub out the rice for quinoa, or I'm going to sub out the rice for, the amount of sweet potato that I eat is just uncanny. Because again, it's very versatile and it does so much. But butternut squash, spaghetti squash, who doesn't love a spaghetti squash? I mean, if you're missing spaghetti as a paleo person, spaghetti squash beats zoodles any day of the week, in my humble opinion, for the starchy aspect, for the texture aspect, for the taste aspect. There's something just unfortunately soggy about a zoodle. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, that is a zucchini noodle. And they, they're helpful. They get the job done, but I would say throw some marinara sauce on a spaghetti squash if you're really feeling like you miss pasta in your life. Just my suggestion. And yes, there are plenty of gluten-free pasta options, but there are very few grain-free pasta options. So throwing that out there as well. I have found a couple. Unfortunately for me, I believe Capello's is one. Ancient Grains may also. I believe they do pizza crust. I'm not sure if Ancient Grains does a pasta, but I believe Capello's does. And I have had it, and they do a wonderful fettuccine. It is quite delicious. You can find it in the freezer aisle. But again, it's a almond flour egg base. But for whatever reason, my tummy doesn't love it. And I will also say that when you are listening to your body and you've done all of this work and you've put in all of this effort and discipline, you will come to find that your body will speak to you as soon as you start to listen to it. And that is the relationship that I cannot advocate for enough. No relationship is more important than your relationship with yourself and your body, because at the end of the day, you're stuck together for your entire existence. And I think that we don't give our bodies the grace, the love, and the appreciation that they deserve. 9 times out of 10, we're mad at our bodies for betraying us in one way or another. And I think that cultivating this relationship, and you might think that I sound like a crazy person, but I guarantee you that a lot of people who have developed a yogic practice, and maybe even they're not in a Reiki practice, but people that have developed this quieting of the mind, this listening in, this turning inwards mentality, your body will speak back to you. It will speak back to you. And I just had an experience the other day where again, they're technically paleo potatoes. So potatoes again are my guilty cheat, and they are my favorite starchy thing. And that I wouldn't. That's why paleo is sustainable, because I can still have a potato. That is why, and I will stand on that 100%. But I bought these fancy. I love truffle potato chips, and I was very excited about them. And they didn't have any ingredients that were in conflict with a paleo diet. And I ate some the other night, and I felt ill when I went to sleep, and I had bad dreams, and I felt ill in the morning, you know, where you wake up and you just feel that like acid feeling. I haven't had that in years. Just as an aside, as a note, I haven't had that feeling in a very, very long time. I had it after I ate those potato chips, and I'm going to throw the rest of them away. And it's a similar feeling that I had after, and this is again, no shade on Capellas. Thank you for all that you do. And they have a lot of really great products. I personally I have a similar, not the same reaction, but I have a similar reaction to that pasta. So it's kind of like the popcorn, right? It's still technically okay, but I know if I'm doing a family pasta night and I want to enjoy and I want to, be part of that's the pasta I'm going to go with. I know I'm going to suffer for it. So why? And so maybe it'll be spaghetti squash for me in the future. But again, it's the idea of options, listening to your body, knowing that option creates trouble, avoiding it, or like the movie theater popcorn, acquiescing to the fact that you are choosing to suffer because the moment in the now is more important to you than the moment in the later. And that happens for a lot of people. But it doesn't mean that it's the right choice in the moment. So I made the determination after I ate the chips, and I kind of started to feel like, oh, this doesn't feel right for some reason. And then I kept eating them, and then I paid the price for it. And so that bag is still sitting. I didn't finish it because it didn't sit well, and I'm going to throw it away. And that's hard for me to do because I don't like to be wasteful. But that's one where it's like, you know what? This is not serving me. Out it goes. And I think that can be said as a motto for life, and one that may take people a lot to learn, and maybe they need to be beat over the head with it over time and time again. But if it doesn't serve you, out it goes. And the only way to know if something serves you or not is to be able to feel within yourself to understand that knowledge. And I've never had an issue with eggs, knock on wood. So thank goodness for that. I will be leaning heavily on my eggs and my Epic protein powder, which is another huge one for me. It's a vegan protein powder, limited ingredient, so I love that. And again, the one thing that I will say is the processed versus non-processed. So making your own mashed potato, sweet or otherwise, is probably still the healthier choice than grabbing the avocado oil potato chip at the end of the day. But in a pinch, in order to be sustainable, if you need that hit of greasy potato chip and it doesn't have the truffle on it that bothers your tummy, then by all means eat that potato chip, as long as it is in keeping with the diet that works for you and you know that you're not going to harm yourself in so doing. So I will leave you again with ahimsa, do no harm, and wish that you have a very successful relationship with your diet, your nutrition, and at the end of the day, your very own body, and cultivate that relationship. Listen to yourself, start to train your body to tell you what it likes, what it doesn't like, when it feels safe and when it doesn't feel safe, and listen to it and trust it. Because if you can't trust your own body and your own mind and your own heart and your own self, then you shouldn't be trusting anybody else. So, jumping off my soapbox and telling you how much I appreciate each and every one of you for sharing this space with me, and ask that you please feel free to share the same space with your loved ones. For more goodness, follow me on all the socials at Above the Ground Podcast and Airs Above Yoga, and visit my website, airsaboveyoga.com, in order to work with me for meditation, yoga, or even as a coach for your goals, nutrition-based or otherwise. As always, don't forget to check out my other episodes and all of my amazing sisters at Divas That Care Network. You can find us on Apple, on Odyssey, on Amazon, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or anywhere else that you might feel guided. Again, my name is Gia-Raquel Rose, owner of Airs Above Yoga, and you are listening to Above the Ground podcast, where every day is a good one.